The rhythmic hum of the tires against the asphalt usually lulled me into a trance, but this time my parents' hushed conversation jolted me awake. Something about their tones made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "Once we drop him off, we'll finally be free of this burden," Dad muttered. My heart rate spiked. Were they talking about me? No, it couldn't be. Mom glanced over her shoulder, her eyes meeting mine through the rearview mirror. A fleeting look of discomfort crossed her face before she turned back to Dad. "He'll be fine. We've arranged everything. It's for the best," she said, her voice strained. A knot formed in my stomach as I realized the truth. They were discussing abandoning me, their own son. Memories of their emotional distance and indifference flooded my mind, suddenly making sense. The car fell silent, but the tension was palpable. I wanted to confront them, to demand answers, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I studied their tense expressions, searching for any hint of remorse or hesitation. There was none. As the miles ticked by, my confusion morphed into a simmering anger. How could they do this to their own child? Didn't they care about me at all? When we stopped at a rest area, Dad announced he needed to stretch his legs. Mom followed suit, leaving me alone in the car. I watched them disappear into the building, my heart pounding with a mix of dread and anticipation. Moments later, the engine roared to life and the car jolted forward. Through the rear window, I saw them standing motionless, their faces devoid of emotion, as they watched me being driven away by their own hands. Tears of anger and betrayal stung my eyes as the reality sank in. They had planned this all along. My own parents had abandoned me, casting me aside like an unwanted burden. In that moment, something shifted within me. I would not let them get away with this. I would expose their deceit and reclaim my dignity, no matter what it took. This was not the end, but the beginning of my fight for justice. After what felt like an eternity, the car slowed to a stop. My heart raced as I contemplated my next move. Should I confront the driver? Try to escape? The uncertainty was suffocating. The driver's door opened and a gruff-looking man peered inside. "You Brady?" he asked, his voice laced with suspicion. I nodded, my mouth dry. He beckoned me to follow him, and we entered a dingy motel room. The pungent smell of cigarette smoke assaulted my nostrils, making me nauseous. "Your folks paid me to bring you here," the man said, tossing a duffel bag onto the bed. "That's all your stuff. They said you'd be fine on your own." My heart sank as the weight of their betrayal crashed over me once again. Abandoned and alone, with nothing but a bag of my belongings. The man left without another word, and I sank onto the bed, burying my face in my hands. Hot tears of anger and despair streamed down my cheeks. How could they do this to me? After what felt like hours, I wiped my eyes and rummaged through the duffel bag, desperate for any clue as to their motives. That's when I found it, a manila envelope tucked away at the bottom. With shaking hands, I tore it open, and my worst fears were confirmed. Legal documents detailing an emancipation petition filed by my own parents seeking to sever all ties with me. They had been planning this for who knows how long, and I had been oblivious. Rage boiled within me as I read through the papers, each line a stinging reminder of their callousness. They claimed I was a financial burden, a hindrance to their lives. Harsh words like unruly and ungrateful jumped off the pages, painting a distorted picture of me that I barely recognized. Tears of anger blurred my vision as I crumpled the papers in my fist. How dare they? After all these years of neglect and emotional absence, they had the audacity to blame me? In that moment, a fire ignited within me, burning away any lingering doubts or attachments. They wanted to be free of me? Fine, but I would not go down without a fight. I would expose their cruelty and deceit, making them face the consequences of their actions. As I formulated a plan, a newfound determination coursed through my veins. I may have been alone, but I was far from helpless. With evidence in hand, I would seek out the one person I knew would have my back. My Aunt Quinlan. Tomorrow, the battle would begin, and this time I would not be the one left behind. The rumble of the truck's engine echoed through the quiet diner as it pulled into the parking lot. I clutched the duffel bag tightly, steeling myself for whatever lay ahead. Aunt Quinlan had agreed to meet me here, my last glimmer of hope in this nightmare. As I entered the diner, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and sizzling bacon enveloped me, providing a brief moment of comfort. A kind-eyed woman behind the counter gave me a warm smile. "Can I help you, honey?" she asked. "I'm supposed to meet my aunt here," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. Her expression softened. "You must be Brady. Your aunt called ahead. Go have a seat, and I'll bring you something to eat while you wait." I nodded gratefully and slid into a corner booth, my eyes fixed on the entrance, waiting for Aunt Quinlan's familiar face to appear. The diner owner, whose name tag read Tara, brought me a steaming plate of pancakes and a glass of orange juice. "On the house," she said with a wink. "You look like you could use a pick-me-up." I managed a faint smile, overwhelmed by her kindness towards a complete stranger. As I picked at the pancakes, my mind drifted back to the betrayal that had brought me here. The anger and hurt threatened to consume me, but I pushed it down, focusing on the task at hand. An hour ticked by, then 2, and still no sign of Aunt Quinlan. Doubt crept in, whispering that perhaps she wouldn't show up either. Maybe everyone was content to abandon me. Just as I was about to give up hope, the bell above the diner's door jingled, and a frazzled-looking Quinlan rushed in. Her eyes scanned the room until they landed on me, and she hurried over, enveloping me in a tight embrace. "Brady, thank God you're all right," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I came as soon as I could." She pulled back, holding me at arm's length, her gaze searching mine. "Tell me everything that happened." And so I did, recounting every agonizing detail: the overheard conversation, the abandonment, the legal papers. With each word, Quinlan's expression grew darker, her jaw clenched in fury. "Those bastards," she spat when I finished, her hands balled into fists. How could they do this to their own son? Tara, who had been hovering nearby, placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "You're safe now, sweetie. We won't let them get away with this." Quinlan nodded, her eyes blazing with determination. "They'll pay for what they've done, I promise you that. We'll take them to court, expose their lies, and make sure they face the consequences." Relief washed over me, knowing that I wasn't alone in this fight. With Aunt Quinlan and Tara on my side, I felt a renewed sense of strength. My parents had made a grave mistake in underestimating me. As we gathered our things to leave, Tara pulled me aside. "You take care of yourself, you hear?" she said, pressing a folded napkin into my hand. "And if you ever need a safe place, you come back here." I pocketed the napkin, grateful for her kindness, and followed Quinlan out to her car. The road ahead would be long and arduous, but for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a glimmer of hope. My parents had thrown me away, but I had found allies who would fight for me no matter what. And in that moment, I knew the battle had just begun. Aunt Quinlan's modest apartment became our base of operations in the days that followed. As soon as we arrived, she sprang into action, making a flurry of phone calls and scouring the internet for resources. "We need to build an airtight case," she declared, her laptop open on the kitchen table. "Those scumbags won't know what hit them." I watched in awe as she navigated the legal maze with practiced ease, jotting down notes and cross-referencing information. It was almost as if she had been preparing for this moment her entire life. "First things first," she said, fixing me with a determined stare. "We need to gather every shred of evidence we can find. Documents, emails, recordings, anything that proves their intent to abandon you." I nodded, recalling the crumpled papers I had stashed in my duffel bag. Quinlan's eyes lit up as I produced them, and she immediately set to work cataloging and organizing the damning evidence. Over the next few days, we pored over the materials, strategizing our approach and anticipating potential counter-arguments from my parents' legal team. Quinlan was relentless, leaving no stone unturned in her quest for justice. "They won't be able to wriggle their way out of this," she assured me, her voice brimming with confidence. "We'll make sure of it." One afternoon, as we were sifting through a stack of old emails, Quinlan let out a triumphant exclamation. "Jackpot!" She brandished a printout, her eyes gleaming. "These emails prove that your parents were planning this for months, maybe even years. They've been squirreling away money, hiding assets, all to ensure they could ditch you and live the high life." My stomach churned as the full weight of their betrayal sank in. They had been methodically plotting to discard me, like I was nothing more than a burdensome inconvenience. Quinlan must have sensed my turmoil because she reached across the table and gave my hand a reassuring squeeze. "We've got them now, Brady. They won't be able to deny or justify any of this. Her words ignited a newfound determination within me. For too long I had been the victim, powerless and cast aside. But no longer. With Quinlan's guidance, I was arming myself with the tools to fight back, to reclaim my dignity and hold my parents accountable for their despicable actions. Over the next few weeks, we assembled a formidable arsenal, a meticulously organized dossier brimming with irrefutable evidence, a list of potential witnesses and character references, and a game plan for navigating the legal system. "We're ready," Quinlan declared one evening, her eyes blazing with conviction. "It's time to take the fight to them." As I nodded in agreement, a sense of calm washed over me. The road ahead would be arduous, but I was no longer the frightened, abandoned child I had been weeks earlier. With Quinlan by my side, I was a warrior, prepared to battle for justice and make my parents answer for their sins. They had made the grave mistake of underestimating me, and now they would face the consequences of their cruelty. The gloves were off, and I was ready for war. As our legal battle heated up, Aunt Quinlan's determination only intensified. She was like a woman possessed, leaving no stone unturned in her quest for justice. "We need to hit them from every angle," she declared one evening, her laptop illuminating her fierce expression. "They can't be allowed to wriggle out of this." I watched in awe as she meticulously scoured through financial records, legal documents, and even old home videos, searching for any shred of evidence that could bolster our case. "Look at this," she said, beckoning me over to the computer. On the screen was a grainy video clip from my childhood, a birthday party if the balloons and cake were any indication. At first I didn't understand the significance, but then Quinlan hit play and the sickening truth became clear. There, in the background, my parents sat together on the couch, their expressions cold and disinterested as the younger version of myself blew out the candles. No smiles, no encouragement, just a callous indifference that made my heart clench. "This is proof of emotional neglect," Quinlan said, her voice thick with anger. "We can use it to show a pattern of behavior, a premeditated disregard for your well-being." As we combed through more footage, the evidence mounted. Missed school events, dismissive comments, and even instances where they outright ignored or belittled me. It was a harrowing reminder of the emotional void that had been my childhood. But Quinlan wasn't done yet. She dug deeper, uncovering financial records that painted an even more damning picture. "They've been siphoning money into offshore accounts for years," she revealed, her brow furrowed in disgust, "all while neglecting to provide you with even the most basic necessities." The revelation hit me like a punch to the gut. Not only had they emotionally abandoned me, but they had also deprived me of material support, all to fuel their own selfish desires. As the days wore on, the magnitude of their betrayal grew more staggering with each new discovery. Quinlan remained relentless, her determination to expose their depravity fueling her every move. "They won't be able to buy their way out of this," she vowed, her eyes blazing with righteous fury. "We're going to make sure they face the full consequences of their actions, both legally and in the court of public opinion." And so, armed with a mountain of damning evidence, we prepared for the showdown. My parents, once untouchable in my eyes, would soon be brought to their knees, forced to answer for their crimes against their own flesh and blood. As the date of the court hearing loomed closer, a sense of vindication washed over me. For too long I had been the victim, cowering in their shadow. But no more. With Quinlan by my side, I was a force to be reckoned with, a warrior ready to unleash the full weight of justice upon those who had so grievously wronged me. The battle lines were drawn, and there would be no mercy, no quarter given. My parents had made a grave mistake in underestimating me, and now they would pay the ultimate price. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with anticipation. Quinlan gripped my hand tightly as we took our seats, her steely gaze fixed on the empty chairs where my parents would soon be sitting. "Stay strong," she whispered. "We've got this." Moments later, the doors swung open, and my parents strode in, flanked by their high-priced legal team. Their arrogant expressions said it all. They believed they were untouchable, that money and power would shield them from consequences. But as our eyes met, I saw a flicker of uncertainty cross their faces. Gone was the scared, helpless child they had abandoned. In my eyes, they saw a warrior, armed with the truth and a thirst for justice that would not be denied. The judge called the proceedings to order, and Quinlan wasted no time in launching our offensive. With surgical precision, she laid out the damning evidence, the emancipation papers, the financial records, the home videos, each piece painting a vivid picture of their depravity. These so-called parents have shown a pattern of callous disregard for their own child's well-being, she declared, her voice ringing out with conviction. They have subjected him to years of emotional and financial neglect, all while scheming to abandon him like discarded trash. My parents shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but I held their gaze, unflinching. This was their reckoning, and they would bear witness to the full weight of their sins. As the evidence mounted, their composed facades began to crack. Quinlan was relentless, hammering them with fact after fact, leaving no room for denial or excuses. These documents prove they've been stashing money away for years, depriving their own son of basic necessities, she said, brandishing the financial records, all to fund their selfish desires and ultimate plan to cast him aside. My father's face flushed red with anger, but I met his glare with a defiant stare. No longer would I cower before his intimidation tactics. Finally, it was my turn to take the stand. With trembling hands, I recounted the agonizing details of their betrayal, the overheard conversation, the abandonment, the crushing realization of their true intentions. They left me stranded like a piece of unwanted garbage, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Their own child, tossed aside without a second thought. Tears streamed down my mother's face, but I felt no sympathy. These were crocodile tears, a desperate attempt to salvage what little shred of humanity they had left. As I stepped down from the stand, I caught Quinlan's proud smile. She gave me a subtle nod, a silent affirmation that I had done well. In the end, the judge's verdict was swift and decisive. The emancipation petition was denied, and an investigation into potential criminal charges was ordered. My parents were ordered to pay restitution and undergo mandatory counseling, but their true punishment went far beyond the legal ramifications. As we left the courthouse, a throng of reporters and onlookers greeted us, showering me with support and condemning my parents' heinous actions. In that moment, I realized that true justice had been served. My parents' reputations were in tatters, their selfish desires exposed for all to see. They had been brought to their knees, forced to answer for their cruelty and callousness. As Quinlan ushered me into the waiting car, I caught one final glimpse of my parents. Broken, disgraced, and utterly defeated, and in that moment I felt a sense of catharsis wash over me. The battle was won, and I had emerged victorious. They had underestimated me, and now they had paid the ultimate price. The aftermath of the courtroom battle was both exhilarating and overwhelming. As Quinlan and I stepped out into the swarm of reporters and supporters, the weight of our victory hit me like a tidal wave. "Brady, Brady! Over here!" The reporters clamored, thrusting microphones and cameras in my face. Quinlan wrapped a protective arm around my shoulders, shielding me from the chaos. "Give the kids some space," she barked, her tone leaving no room for argument. As we pushed through the crowd, snippets of their questions reached my ears. How does it feel to finally get justice? What would you say to your parents now? Are you worried about potential retaliation? I remained silent, letting Quinlan take the lead as she expertly navigated us to the safety of her car. It was only when the door slammed shut, muffling the frenzy outside, that I finally let out the breath I had been holding. "You did it, kid," Quinlan said, her eyes shining with pride. "You took those bastards down in spectacular fashion." A grin spread across my face as the reality sank in. We had won, not just in the legal sense, but in the court of public opinion as well. My parents' reputations were in tatters, their misdeeds laid bare for all to see. "I couldn't have done it without you," I said, gripping her hand tightly. "Thank you for never giving up on me." Quinlan scoffed, waving off my gratitude. "Don't mention it. Those lowlifes had it coming. Now we just need to make sure they face the full consequences of their actions." Over the next few days, the saga of my parents' betrayal became a national spectacle. News outlets clamored for interviews, and social media buzzed with outrage and support for my cause. Quinlan fielded the requests with a shrewd eye, carefully curating our narrative and leveraging the public outcry to our advantage. "We need to keep the pressure on," she said, poring over the latest headlines. "The more exposure this gets, the harder it will be for them to wriggle out of facing real consequences." And so we rode the wave of public fury, granting strategic interviews and releasing carefully curated evidence that further damned my parents' actions. Their reputations were in free fall, and I reveled in their downward spiral. But even as the world rallied behind me, a part of me couldn't help but feel a twinge of sadness. These were the people who had brought me into this world, the ones who were supposed to love and nurture me unconditionally. And yet, they had chosen to discard me like worthless trash. Quinlan, ever perceptive, sensed my inner turmoil. "It's okay to feel conflicted, Brady," she said gently. "What they did was unforgivable, but they're still your parents." I nodded, blinking back tears. I just never thought they were capable of something so cruel. Wrapping me in a fierce hug, Quinlan vowed, "They'll get what's coming to them, I promise. And when the dust settles, you'll be able to move on and build the life you deserve, one filled with love and support." As I clung to her, drawing strength from her unwavering presence, I knew she was right. The road ahead would be long, but I had already taken the first steps toward healing and reclaiming my power. My parents had made a grave mistake in underestimating me, and now, as their world crumbled around them, I would rise from the ashes, stronger and more resilient than ever before. The days following the courtroom battle were a whirlwind of change. As the dust settled, the true extent of my parents' downfall became evident. "They're facing criminal charges," Quinlan announced one morning, her eyes alight with vindication. "Abandonment, child neglect, financial fraud, the whole 9 yards." I nodded solemnly, a mixture of relief and lingering sadness washing over me. As much as I despised their actions, a part of me still yearned for the parents I had once known, the ones who were supposed to love and protect me. But Quinlan's voice snapped me back to reality. "And that's not all. The court has ordered them to pay restitution, along with mandatory counseling and community service." A grim satisfaction coursed through me at the thought of my parents being forced to atone for their sins. They had brought this reckoning upon themselves, and now they would face the full weight of their consequences. As the legal proceedings unfolded, Quinlan wasted no time in solidifying my newfound independence. With her guidance, I navigated the emancipation process, officially severing my legal ties to my parents. "From now on, you're in charge of your own life," she said, her voice brimming with pride as we signed the final paperwork. It was a surreal moment, equal parts exhilarating and daunting. For the first time in my life, I was truly free. Free from the shackles of their control, free to forge my own path without their toxic influence. In the weeks that followed, I settled into a new routine, one that finally felt like a true fresh start. Quinlan's modest apartment became my home, a safe haven filled with warmth and support. "Family now, kid," she said, ruffling my hair affectionately. And family sticks together no matter what. With her unwavering guidance, I began to piece my life back together. We enrolled me in a new school, one with a supportive environment and resources to help me catch up on the education I had missed. "You're a smart kid," Quinlan assured me. "You'll be back on track in no time." And true to her word, I thrived in my new academic setting. The weight of my parents' oppressive expectations had been lifted, replaced by a newfound passion for learning and personal growth. Quinlan also encouraged me to seek counseling, recognizing the deep emotional wounds that needed healing. At first I was hesitant, but her gentle nudging and unwavering support eventually convinced me to take that important step. As the weeks turned into months, I began to see the transformation within myself. The anger and bitterness that had once consumed me gradually gave way to a sense of peace and self-acceptance. "You've come a long way, Brady," Quinlan remarked one evening as we shared a homemade meal. "I'm proud of the person you're becoming." Her words filled me with a warmth I had rarely experienced before. The unconditional love and support of a true family. It was a stark contrast to the emotional void I had endured with my parents, and it fueled my determination to continue growing and thriving. As I looked towards the future, I felt a sense of excitement and possibility. The road ahead was uncharted, but for the first time in my life, I was the one holding the map. My parents' betrayal had once threatened to break me, but instead it had forged me into a stronger, more resilient version of myself. And as I embraced the love and guidance of my newfound family, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I would face them head on, armed with the knowledge that I was worthy, capable, and truly loved.